Y ahí está. Aló, aló, aló.
Aló, aló. Probando. Un, dos, tres. Hi, everybody. Very good afternoon. Here we are in Santiago de Chile at the Vitacura Gliding Airport, broadcasting live our last race of this Soaring Grand Prix held here, a qualifying race in, as I said, Santiago, Chile. Today, Saturday, we are racing our last task. This is day 8 and race number 6. And we're about to have a start at 3 o'clock. It's programmed for 3 o'clock. Everybody's up in the air. Everybody's climbing. Everybody is getting his altitude ready to have a start, to fly through the start line at a maximum altitude of 2,800 meters. That is the maximum altitude allowed to cross the start line. We can see that black wall that we see here on the left side on the screen is the start line where the gliders have to fly through at a maximum altitude of 2,800 meters. Right now, we have gliders already at 3,300 meters, 3,100 meters. It looks like everybody is around the 3,000 meter line. Doesn't make much sense to climb much higher than that for the start. The race today is a 317 kilometer long race. We'll give you a general view of the race. The task has a little bit different shape than the task that was raced yesterday. Remember, yesterday we stayed with the gliders basically in the Central Valley and the westerly hills of the Central Valley. Today, the race is about as long as yesterday, but with the difference that we actually are starting, we're flying through the start line from south to north as we have to fly to our first turn point that is in the northern part of the Los Andes Valley. The Los Andes Valley is this green spot here, and I will be back with you in a couple of minutes. I'm just back here, sorry for that. We're just reprogramming here our system. So we have a shorter delay in terms of what is really happening and what we are broadcasting and showing you on the screen. We will have a shorter delay, so that makes it more real-time and more realistic. As I said, the start is from south to north. It's basically the same start line as yesterday. It is set up about 10 kilometers north of our glider port here in Santiago. And the gliders have to fly the first leg towards the northern part of the Los Andes Valley. That valley is the one that is crossed by the Aconcagua River. With my pointer, I'm showing the Aconcagua River and the Los Andes Valley is this one here. So we actually have to fly to turn point number 1 called La Torre, the tower. That is a 66 kilometer straight line. And from there, we will be flying to, let me see, there's something we have to change here because there is a little bit of a mistake here with the turn points. We will reprogram this because turn point number 2 is actually a leg towards the south, not towards the north. We will reprogram this so we can show you the real time here. I'll be back soon with you. Here I'm back with you. I hope everybody can hear me right. Please, if you have any questions, open your chat window in YouTube and send the questions there, either in Spanish, English, or German. Don't use any other language than that. I will not be able to answer.
Japanese.
I was just commenting that I thought that there is a problem with the task that we have programmed here on the screen, but it's actually the right task. The problem was me. I was looking at the wrong task sheet. I was looking at task number B. So my fault. We are racing task A, and instead of the 317 kilometers I was mentioning, we are racing 372 kilometers. The only thing that changes here is that the second turn point is the one that you see on the screen. It's a little bit further north than turn point number 1, called La Torre. That is 66 kilometers north of the start line, and then they continue to a second turn point, Las Monjas, another 27 kilometers further to the north. And from there they head back all the way to the south, but with a big difference to the task that we flew yesterday, that everybody has to stay on the higher peaks. They will be flying the high mountains. They will be flying inside of the Andes chain. And the reason for that it has been set up like this, is because, again, we had some little glitches with what the weather was forecasted for. We thought that it's going to be a slower day, but basically that is because there is a inversion layers over the central part of Chile that was clearly seen in the thermic profile that we got in the morning. But over that inversion, the day opens up pretty strong, and it should be a much better day than it was actually forecasted. We already have, we are close to the highest temperature that is forecasted. It's around 33 degrees Celsius for today in the afternoon. And with that temperature, that inversion will be it will be possible to break that inversion and go through it and fly on the higher parts of the atmosphere and get into the higher mountains. We will show you now what is happening with the gliders. Most of them are going for their start line right now. You can see it here on the screen. They all flying on a southerly heading to position themselves on the southern part of that black line that you can see on the screen. The task is now set up from what you can see is from south to north, and they have to position themselves on the southerly part of the start line and fly through it towards the north. So everybody's now almost ready. We will see this from the side, how it looks, how they set themselves up to fly through the start line. Everybody is now going through the start line. You can see it here clearly. Gilles Navas went through the start line first, followed by Marius and René Vidal. Thomas Gaussen is a little bit further in the back. Papa Quebec Solu, flown by Hans Weiner, is also there, running number 4. He had a very good start today. Yesterday he was complaining about his start, but today he has good altitude. He's in the pack with everybody else in the front and had a very clean, nice start. And our local pilots, Mario Reyes, Nicolas Becerra, Arturo Diaz, they're flying a little bit further in the back, but everybody looks like had a very nice, clean start. As I mentioned, everybody will be racing to the north now. The challenge today, I think, for them is to stay high flying north, not to fall into the lower parts of the atmosphere in the valley, because that will position them in underneath that layer of inversion, of thermal inversion. And that will be very stressful if you fall below the inversion further north, and you have to fight yourself back up. That's going to be very, very tough. The start, I was asked here, it was at 3 o'clock, so everybody had a clean start. If Marius, there is a comment that Marius looks like he started a little bit too early. I don't think so, because the first one to fly through the start line was Gilles Navas, and it was on time. They actually started a little bit after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was about 3 and 2 minutes as the first ones crossed the start line. Everybody flies side by side here. They all can see each other, and everybody's flying approximately the same speed. We can take a look at maybe one of the cockpits to see how it looks like. Let's position ourselves in Thomas Gostner's cockpit, and we will see what they're doing. Thomas is approaching a ridge that is called El Maraco. I'm really sorry. Now this is a little bit further ahead. He's approaching El Cerro Gordo in La Deza, and he's following Papa Quebec Zulu. He's following Marius, and further ahead is René Vidal and Gilles Navas. We can see the lines, the trace lines they leave behind. Obviously, in the real life, you will not see the trace lines. This is set up here in the computer. That is just to help us to have a better understanding what in 3D is every glider doing. This gives you actually the feeling how the gliders are pulling up and speeding up. When the trace line goes upwards, the glider is actually being pulled up by the pilot. He raises the nose, slows the glider, and he does that when he reaches packs of hot air climbing, and he wants to fly through that hot air slower to make use of that energy. So he pulls up, and when he flies out of that hot air and the air starts to sink, he wants to be faster through that sinking air mass, so he flies faster. So that's why we see the trace lines going up and down. This is a little bit what it looks like when you're sitting in that cockpit and you're flying along the ridges, following the other gliders. You see all the gliders maintain somehow the same altitude, and here comes the challenge to be the cleaner pilot, to be the pilot that uses better the energy. So you start to gain meter by meter, and you separate yourself from the other gliders in terms of that you're being higher, or if you're not doing your job, you're being lower. That is part of the task here, especially when you're flying straight ahead. You see the speeds here are not really high. They're flying about 115, 120 kilometers per hour. And that is basically because they're flying in a mass of air that is maybe stable, and they don't want to fall out of that mass. 1 second. Here I am. See that we have a little bit more viewers now. We have about 20 people in the chat. I hope that everybody shares this link, YouTube link, with your friends, with your pilot friends. Share it in the clubs. In Europe especially, it is already afternoon, late afternoon. Most of you guys will be sitting inside, and just take a look at this, share this with your friends so they can spread this around. It's really fun, and it gets really, really intense when it comes to the end of the race. Everybody stopped now for a climb. They're circling. That's why we see that the planes are turning around. Obviously, these are explanations for people that don't know a lot about flying gliders.
Control más. Control más. El Hans.
El Hans? O el Thomas?
Sí. Para ponerlo uno aquí, para ponerlo todo. Control más y hinchar. A la izquierda.
Ahí.
Ahí te vi ya.
Ahí aparecen los dos. Sorry, we were just learning how to use the system here. What I just managed to find out that I can get the information of two gliders on the screen here. In this case, we have the information of Thomas Gostner and Hans Weiner. Now, we are sitting in the cockpit of Thomas. We're sitting actually in the cockpit of Hans Weiner. Yeah, that's his cockpit. We'll take a general view of where they are right now. Okay, here I manage this to give you a view of what they're doing. They actually decided to go north high. It looks like everybody read the meteorological conditions like I did a while ago. And if I would be flying, I would have decided before the race, Alex, make it patient, climb, try to be high, try to be above the inversion. And that is actually what they are trying to do. They had some time flying before the start, so they actually must have seen that it was quite difficult to fly at lower altitude, so they decided to go north at the higher route. We call this the high route. The ridge they are flying along here is called Los Españoles, and this is basically our entrance to the high mountains. If I can give you a view a little bit further more from the southeast towards the northwest, you will see that this ridge takes you into the high mountains. What you have here at the top of the screen, in the middle of the screen, far top, that little peak in the far horizon is the Aconcagua mountain. That's the highest mountain on the southern hemisphere, actually. And it's the highest mountain in South America, and I'm not sure if it is actually the highest one on the southern hemisphere also. Only in America?
All America.
All America, it is. It is. In all America, in the all Americas. So it is 6,800 and something meters high. So it's a spot that a lot of people go to climb. It is actually in Argentina, not in Chile. Some people say half of it's in Chile and half it's in Argentina. The whole mountain actually sits in Argentina. Okay, just a little bit of geography here, but they're trying to stay high, as I said, so that's why they are flying along this ridge called Los Españoles. We will get a little bit closer to the gliders in the front to see actually what altitude they're flying along this ridge here. Okay, I will actually want to show René Rene decided to flew ahead a little bit further north. And here we have Rene, and he's followed by Marius and by Hans Weiner. Actually, very nice. They're flying along this ridge, and what they will try to do is to find lift at each and one of these small edges that come down the ridge. These edges actually, when they're faced out to the wind and they get heated up, they sometimes create very good thermals. My guess is that they are flying in clean air, that there is no clouds yet. Early in the afternoon, around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I had a chance to be in the air, and I saw all this area from the other side of the Santiago Valley, and there were just a few little clouds being formed. And I guess from what I can see here that right now that there aren't too many clouds, and that they are just flying in clean air. Rene pressed along further north, and he actually decided to fly over that valley and not to spend time, because he must have not found very strong lift in that area, and he decided just press on and fly into the valley of Las Lagunas, over these flat ridges that he's approaching right now, and he will try to get some lift there. He has to go all the way. It's about almost 100 kilometers north. The first trim point is 66 kilometers north, and then he has another 27 kilometers towards the second turn point. And as we mentioned, the turn points are positioned a little bit furtherly east into the Andes, so they will be forced to fly on the higher hills. So Rene pressed on. He's followed by Hans Weiner, that just showed up here on the screen. If we zoom out, we'll see Marius following the same route, also flying across this valley, not spending too much time in turning. Now, where are the rest of the pilots? Let's see that. What did they decide? We will see Thomas Gostner and Sergio Campos flying along the Españoles, and as it looks, Thomas actually has a little bit more altitude than the gliders in front of him, but it's not much. It's about 100 meters, not more than that. So he spent quite a lot of time. Let's see if we can see his trace. The trace is already gone, but he spent quite a lot of time to find some lift to get a little bit higher. Again, here the ideal is to set yourself in position on top of this ridge here where I'm pointing out with that circle. If you can fly on top of this ridge, you will be using the air masses that climb from one side and the air masses that climb on the other side of the ridge. They combine all together and they create sometimes really good lift. But for that, you have to spend time circling, trying to position yourself on top of that ridge, and that is time consuming. So especially in a race like this where you have gliders that start to press north, you have to decide, does it make sense to stay in a 1.5 thermal to find this lift and to get up there, or should I just follow with them and keep pressing? These again are the decisions that make the difference in between one glider or pilot and the other one, and obviously at the results of the race finally. Rene Hidal, that is 5 Bravo. He actually reached the ridge on the other side of this valley, and he's flying the southerly ridge of the valley of Las Lagunas. Las Lagunas is this white mountain that Rene has in front of him. This is a very nice saddle that is pointing towards the northwest, and it's exposed to the air mass in the valley of Los Andes and all the winds in that valley. Remember, you will have effects of the general winds up here. The wind condition today, it was very weak wind. Actually, just above 4,000 meters, the wind picks a little bit up, but it's not stronger than 10 to 15 kilometers. That's about what I saw today in the morning in a very early flight that I had in the morning. And so they will not be exposed to general strong winds. They will just have the local winds that are formed and created in these valleys, winds that are created by the heated air that is formed around these darker spots, and then it's released with the wind. If you have a releasing point, that generates the lift and the thermals that these gliders want to fly. I'll give you a view looking from the north to the south, so we can see René, what he's doing, and the rest of the gliders following him. René, you can see, is leading this first part of the race, followed by Marius, closely by Marius, just a few meters behind, and basically at the same altitude. Looks like Marius is about 20 meters higher or something like that, but not much. If we zoom them in, they're basically at the same altitude, flying along this ridge. Hans Weiner in Papakelek Sulu is a kilometer or something further back. And all the rest of the gliders, they decided to use the same route. Thomas Gostner, difference to yesterday, Thomas Gostner started pretty good. He was not the very first one to go through the start line, but he was in the pack just a few 500 meters behind the first one. And you can see now he is already about 5 kilometers behind René Vidal, and actually lower than René Vidal. So sometimes if you just lose the connection of one thermal, of one good spot, you lose a lot of time, and that is time consuming. But remember that you still have to fly 370 kilometers, and one of these mistakes can be actually committed by either René or Marius or any of the leading gliders, and that gives a chance for the gliders in the back not to make mistakes and pick up again. It happens quite a lot. If we turn around our view from the east towards the valley where they actually flying to, we will see Las Lagunas, this saddle, white saddle that points out into the valley. You can see Las Lagunas here at this position. This is the saddle of Lagunas. It's actually a yellow, brown, white mountain. It's quite impressive. And it looks into the valley of Los Andes. This is the town of Los Andes. And this is the Aconcagua Valley, the river that flows from the easternly Andes, from the Argentinian border to the Pacific Ocean. It actually doesn't carry any water of the Aconcagua. All the water, all the melting water from the Aconcagua flows into Argentina. But this river is called anyhow Aconcagua River. So, but it gets born very close to where the Aconcagua sits. We can see the leading group of the gliders here. René leading the whole pack. There are two gliders actually leading, René and Marius, very close together, and followed by Hans Weiner. And then we have a pretty spread out group of pilots in the back, including Thomas Gostner, Jill Navas. Remember, Jill was the very first one to fly through the start line. We were actually looking at our watch if he made a mistake to fly through it too early, but it actually was just right on time. About a minute and a half after 3 o'clock, he flew through that start line. So it looks like he's okay with it. But he was first. They all had the same altitude, and now he's somewhere there in the 6th, 7th, 8th position. Showing you the difference it makes when you make one decision and it's not actually the most precise or right one for that moment. It's not that you're making a big error, it's just you decide to do something that was less appropriate for the day and the conditions. When they reach this saddle here, we have the tendency to actually explore this saddle quite a lot, to make figures of 8, flying right and left, back and forth, to see if we can find good lift. Sometimes you find very strong lift that takes you all the way up to 4,000, 4,500 meters, sometimes pretty higher than the saddle itself is. But as you can see, the pilots decided not to circle, but just to fly along this ridge. If we look at the information of their cockpit, they're flying at low speeds, and they're using just the energy underneath them to keep their altitude. They're not losing any altitude. Don't worry about the speed here of René Vidal. It shows 33 kilometers, but that is actually when we have these little interruptions of the signal. The computer makes calculations in between. He keeps the glider moving, but it's not the real speed. Now here we have a clean signal again, and we have the right speed he's flying. He's at 150, 160 kilometers per hour. So the difference in having a clean signal and a glitch of the signal is that the flag of the glider is solid or it's transparent. That makes it the difference. Okay, one more time. I'm getting asked here about the turn points. First turn point is towards the north, called La Torre. I will give you a two-dimensional view of this task of today. Actually don't have it set it up here. I will see if I can do that in a while. I'm just gonna show it to you in a three-dimensional view, oriented from south to north. This is actually the shape of the task, and you can see the gliders are in this area. This is the valley of Los Andes, and they are flying now over the river of Aconcagua, the Aconcagua River. And the Aconcagua itself is let me see if I can point it out for you. Yeah, okay. The Aconcagua itself is this snow mass here, ice mass. This is the Aconcagua mountain. This is the highest peak in the whole area. And you can see Las Torres is positioned towards the west of the Aconcagua mountain. The borderline is somewhere here. I will get a little bit closer so you can see the ice mass of the Aconcagua mountain. The border is on this ridge here, and the first turn point is about 10 kilometers west of the border. They're just gonna have to touch this turn point and keep flying north towards Las Monjas, and this is inside of this valley, so they will reach this ridge and they will fly along this ridge going for Las Monjas, and they will come back on this ridge. The challenge then is to see if they can stay high, because if you can see the line, the black line that goes south, straight south, is the line that connects the second turn point with the third point, that is El Bronce, 116 kilometers south. Here in the general view, you can see it's fairly straight line towards the south. Now, if you stay high, as I mentioned, high at this side, on the east side of the whole course, you'll be able to fly straight south through this valley I'm pointing out here. This is the valley of El Olivar. This is a valley that starts on a glacier here, a beautiful glacier, and it runs south. And if you position yourself on top of this glacier, you can enter this valley and follow this ridge all the way down, using all the energy without making a single turn, flying very fast, go out to that turn point, just turn around, hit the other turn point number 4, that is Olivares Sur, and from then you have a pretty fast race doing all the rest of the track, going out to this lagoon here called Chala and back home. So the challenge is stay high and connect yourself with the high ridges of the Andes here. The highest mountain here is Aconcagua. You don't have to be high as the Aconcagua. That is 6,600 meters. But to enter this valley, you need at least 4,700 meters. If you don't have 4,700, ideally 5,000 meters, you will not be able to enter into the valley of El Olivar, and you will have to follow the route that takes you westward, outward here, but then you have to fight yourself back in here to come back. So if one has a good connection to get a good climb and stay up here, he definitely has to make a decision there. If the climb is good, go all the way up, let the others just fly along, go all the way up and fly south. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Let's get again close to René. Let's see if he's still in his cockpit here. He actually is. It looks like he's standing. We will change to maybe Hans Weiner's cockpit to see where he is. Hans is a little bit further in the south. Marius y René? Ah, perfecto. Just being told that Marius and René, they're both flying side by side. We will zoom that in so we can show it here. That's right. They're still side by side, René and Marius. Now I have a clean signal again from René, and we can see he's flying 120 kilometers. He's not flying very fast right now, but he's just using the energy that is, you can see he's high above the valley here. He hasn't reached the ridges yet. I will give you the view of from a west to east view. You'll notice that if I get these guys a little bit closer, here it is. They're flying just a couple hundred meters above the ground, and they're pointing to the ridge in front of them. If I position myself behind them, you can see they're pointing towards this ridge here. This ridge, again, is pointing, facing directly into this huge valley. And this, again, is, you have to think about the sun is almost on top of them. There are no shadows, almost no shadows. Everything here gets heated up. And everything here, if it's hot and it has unstable air around, it wants to get off that ground and climb. And that's what you're actually looking for. You want to cross these valleys and position yourself on top of these ridges. We'll see, we'll stay a little bit closer with René and Marius here, because it's going to be interesting to see if they find that lift there or not. We have René and Marius. They're leading the race. Let's see if we have another glider close by. Hans Weiner. And Thomas is, yeah. I positioned myself on the northern face of them, and we can see Marius and René. They looks like they are searching for some lift. They're doing figures of eights and looking if they can central lift. René actually is climbing about 2.5 meters now. 2 meters. And both of them now followed closely by Hans Weiner, who's doing a very nice race until now. He's one of our rookie pilots in the Grand Prix. So great for Hans. He has been enjoying this race a lot. And he's followed by Thomas Gosner, who picked up a little bit of speed. He was somewhere set back at the beginning of the race, but he's picking up some speed. And he's definitely going to see if he can catch up with René and Marius. Now, they have the advantage that René and Marius are marking thermals now. So if they see them, they will go straight for them. Now, Hans decided actually to turn something before René and Marius. Nothing to say about it if that is wrong or if it's right. It's just your own decision. If you feel a good thermal, strong lift, and you decide to turn, then you better just put yourself in your position, forget the others, and make the best out of that turn and that climb. And sometimes it pays off. Sometimes you found something stronger, and then you have a better chance to climb faster. Thomas is reaching now Hans Weiner here, and he's underflying. René stayed in his thermal, Marius left it, and René did another second turn after Marius, and now he's following Marius. These are the things that separate one glider from the other, and if that happens once after another, once and once again, we will start to see planes to get further apart and separate them, get separated, and that, well, is the decision-making whole flying thing here. And even Marius left the thermal sooner than René. He's higher than René. And that is interesting. René spent 2 more turns in that thermal, and he's actually not higher. Marius and René, they're flying now side by side, same altitude almost, 50 meters apart. Obviously interesting. Consider that Marius has less knowledge of this area than René, and he's flying in front of René. That is very interesting, very nice. Mucho. Too big. That's too small. No, that's about there. Everybody that is listening to this, we have 50 viewers now of this broadcast. Everybody that knows somebody that likes flying gliders, please send the link of the transmission and share it. So we have more viewers. This is our last day. Today we will have a definition of who's going to win this qualifying Grand Prix. Remember that the 3 first places are very close together. Thomas is leading with 33 points, followed by René Vidal, who is matched with the 3rd position, Marius Pluschauskas, both with 30 points, and Jürgen Wenzel is with 26 points at the 4th place. So there is chance for everybody here to win this. and the I would say, very first places. Remember that the first one of the day gets 10 points, the second one 8, the third 7, and so on. It goes down until the 9th position that receives the last point. We have now 3 gliders flying together. Hans Weiner caught up very nice with René and Marius, and Thomas is flying on the same ridge a little bit further outside. I want to show you in general on the view what are these gliders, where they are in respect of the turn point they have to fly to, because we have another 2 gliders that took a different route and flew a different way into that first turn point. I'm gonna position myself in a view from south to north, so we can see the gliders. They have to head towards this very first point, and the group of 4 gliders at this area here decided to stay on top of this ridge here, and 2 of the other gliders, that is Gilles Navas and Sergio Campos, they actually decided to go to the ridge that is on the easterly side of this river and of the first turn point. So it's going to be interesting to see who has a better approach to this first part of the race towards the north. In terms of altitude, Sergio is 3,000 and Gil Navas 3,300 meters high, and Marius Pluskauskas is at 3,600. So the group that is leading is about 400 meters higher, and that obviously is a good advantage. Now, these 4 gliders, they have to jump off this ridge and fly out into the valley towards this turn point, and then they will have to decide, should they just follow north to the ridge north of the turn point, or should they start to come back here. My guess is they will jump off this ridge towards the east, mark the turn point, and stretch their nose and their flight direction towards this ridge here on the north to get altitude here and fly towards Las Monjas. Now we can see René, Marius, and Hans Weiner, the leading 3 gliders, took the decision to leave this ridge and go for the turn point. This is a little bit of a view, what it looks like when you leave these ridges. You can see the trace they leave behind. They climbed here and they didn't decide to fly further in. It doesn't make sense because they were just square to the turn point they have to fly to, so they decided to leave it and with this altitude go for the first turn point. And after that, my guess is they will fly through the turn point and approach the ridge they have towards the northeast of their flying path. I'm being asked here. I can't identify who's asking it, but yeah. Well, in terms of my opinion here, which is the better route? In my experience, definitely the ridge that was approached by René and Marius and Hans Weiner is a more productive ridge in thermals and lift than the one that is being approached by Gilles and Sergio Campos. Here on this view now, we can see Gilles and Sergio, they're fighting themselves up on this ridge. You can find good lift, but I definitely think in terms of producing better lift this ridge where we can see Gostner flying and being followed by Mario Reyes, who's also having a good flight for the day. This ridge here is more productive in terms of thermals than this one here. If we take a look at Jill's information, flight information, he's circling. We can see that he's circling, but he's not really in strong lift. He actually decided to leave the thermal now. I'm fighting here a little bit with the mouse, so that's why it takes me a little bit of time to get to show you what I want to show you. We can see Sergio Campos stayed in that thermal, but he's not doing a lot there. He actually decided also to leave it. So you see, they definitely took a faster, this might look like a faster route here, being on the east side. It's a more straight line towards the turn points that were set up, but the route on the west of the whole track is actually a route that gives you better conditions. Just want to see what these three gliders are doing. I wonder why they actually marked that turn point and they came back to that ridge instead of flying ahead. Just want to make sure if we are flying task A or B, because the difference here is actually task B didn't have the northerly turn point. So, but it looks like they came back for that climb instead of flying into the valley. Now, what we don't have here on the screen, we don't see here on the screen is clouds. Sometimes you get cloud formation in here, and this gets congested with clouds, and you just cannot fly in. So you will have to come back out, climb, and approach the trim point from the other side. So that's something that we just can well think about, or that might be the reason they came back for this, or they just had a feeling that climb here is much better, and they will want to climb and put themselves on top of this ridge here and fly along this ridge further north. I will give you a perspective of where the turn point here is. Here we can see the first turn point they marked, and they flew from this ridge out to the turn point, and instead of flying north and using these ridges to mark the second turn point, they came back to this ridge, and there we can see they're climbing now again. Thomas Gostner is with them, but he hasn't flown towards the first turn point yet, so Remy is now in a climb, a 4-meter climb, so that is a very decent climb. And there are two gliders that we have here on the east side that actually are fighting and trying to get up there before they mark the first turn point. I'll give you a view of the two-dimensional screen. Remember, it is not coincident with what we see in the 3D because of the lack of time. The turn point number 1 is actually here, and turn point number 2 is further north in here. Los Monjes is here, and this is the very first turn point. There is one glider, Papa Quebec Whiskey, flying through that turn point. That is Sergio Campos. Sergio's followed by Jill's. This is Jill's. They took the easterly route. The rest of the gliders took the westerly route, climbing here. This glider here is 43. That is Thomas. Thomas is now flying out to the turn point and to come back here. Now the whole bunch of gliders are thermaling here. So there we have the difference in between the strategies here. Altitude-wise, this Ventus that is flying through that thermal is 3,200 meters high, and I would say these gliders here are a little bit higher. They're 3,700 meters, so there is 600 meters of difference in between this group of gliders and this glider here. Papa Quebec Whiskey actually marked the turn point number 1, and he decided to stay on this ridge and to search for good lift here. Now, if he does that, it tells us that there are no clouds and that it would be possible to fly in here. But again, I can't see it. I just can guess it. Please remember, share the link of this transmission with all your friends, so we get a good size of viewers and followers of the last day of this classifying Grand Prix here in Santiago and Vitacura. We'll come back to the 3D screen. I want to see what Gilles and Sergio Campo is doing. Actually, Sergio is here, Papa Quebec Whiskey, and Gilles Navas is behind him. Gilles hasn't marked the turn point yet, but he decided to go for the ridge. Hopefully he just flies in there to get climb and altitude, and then fly back out to the to mark the turn point. Here we have both gliders inside. If we go to the pack of other gliders that were leading, that already marked the turn point, and we put them in perspective to that turn point and the other two gliders, it would look like this, looking from the west to the east. We have René Vidal flying here with Marius. As we mentioned, 3,600 meters of altitude, and we have Gilles and Sergio Campos flying on the other ridge on the east, but with about 300 meters, 400 meters less altitude. One of them actually marked the turn point, that is Sergio Campos, and Gilles Navas hasn't marked the turn point yet. There are some questions here where we can see the two-dimensional screen. I can show it to you if you want, but if anybody uses Flight Radar 24, you would be able to see all the gliders on Flight Radar 24. I'm gonna just check if it's working, but yeah, Flight Radar 24 is live, and you would see all the gliders actually the same way I see them here on this two-dimensional screen, the screen I'm putting in here now. This screen is also a website. You can see it up here, but I think it's password protected. I'm not sure about that. I can find out for you guys if that is password protected or not. Here at this screen, if we look at it, coming back a little bit to the geographic classes here, we can see the borderline here. Where I have my hand, we have the gliders flying here, and the borderline is this ridge. Here again, it's a good example of what I mentioned yesterday, that the higher ridges, mountains, are the division in between the Chilean and Argentinian territory. Here, this road is the international road towards Argentina. This is what takes you from the Los Andes Valley to Mendoza, and you'll be driving past Portillo. That is a pretty famous ski resort here. Very nice ski resort, just close to this lagoon, Laguna del Inca. So this is a little bit geography here. And the Aconcagua mountain actually is this one here. It's pointed out here. And all the water that melts on this ice field and snow field flows down these rivers, but it all flows to Argentina. None of this water flows to Chile. This ridge here divides the waters, and everything on the west side flows to Chile, and everything on the east side flows to Argentina. Okay, we'll come back now to what the race is going on. We have now 3 gliders in this position on the east of trim point number 1. Trim point number 1 is here, and all the rest of the gliders actually decided to fly along on the west side. Now we have let me just see where Rene is. That is Thomas, because we have a few gliders here that are flying in the area but not in the competition. Let me just see on the 3D screen where they are, and I'll come back to you with that. Okay, here we have a clean view on the 2-dimensional screen. With I just fixed it. No, I did not. Somebody else fixed it for me. We have the trim point number 1 and trim point number 2, and there's a bunch of gliders here. Decided to stay on the easterly ridge and fly direct, and there's a bunch of gliders that decided to take the route, but this is actually not a glider in the competition Alpha India Whiskey. And this one is, this is Thomas Gostner, and Quebec Sulu is Hans Weiner. So let's take a look again on the 3D screen, and let's see where Marius is, René Vidal, and the rest of them. Okay, we have a weak signal here of René Vidal. There we have a clean signal now, followed with by Hans Weiner. And Marius Puškauskas is actually flying. He decided to go to the other side of the valley. He's right now with a weak signal, so the information we have is that he was last seen here, but this comes and goes, so we will come back with the signals in a while. The same as for René and Hans Weiner. Thomas Gostner right now has a clean signal, and let's see where he is. Okay, Thomas joined the other 3 gliders. Mario Reyes, Sergio Becerra, Sergio Campos, and Gilles Navas on the easterly side. So there we have Thomas with the other 3 gliders here trying to get altitude and to fly along this ridge to trim point number 2. The signal will be coming and going. And remember, this is the ridge that takes us to turn point number 2. And René decided, together with Hans Weiner, to take the longer road out on this side. Interesting. And Marius actually did something in between, started here, but then jumped on the other side. No, unfortunately, Angel Casalvo is not here with the transmission. He's looking at it, and he's